So in front of me, I've got two laptops. The Sager NP8378F2. What a name. And over here, got the Eluktronics Max 17. Now, these aren't directly comparable because the Max 17 comes with a 2070, and this one comes with a 2070 Super. But they're identically priced. $2,000. If you had $2,000 to spend on a laptop right now, you should probably be looking at one of these. I was looking at both. Lucky enough where I can choose to have one in front of me, and I'm going to return whichever one I don't want. Short answer is I'm keeping the Sager, I'm returning the Max 17. What do I like better about the Sager? Per key RGB, and I really like the feel of the keyboard. Just the feel of it, the keystroke, the distance, the spacing, plus the RGB is cool. Whereas here, 4-zone RGB, I don't really like this keyboard, and it's not very spacious. The keystroke's very shallow. It's not for me. With that being said, some people will like it. I personally hate it. Now, as you can see right here by these bezels, these laptops, they're both 17.3-inch laptops. The Max 17 is significantly smaller. I mean, I got them right here in front of each other. They're the same distance, but look how much smaller the screen where it sits because of the lower bezel on the bottom. I know I don't have the best camera lighting setup, so it is what it is. But it's a discernible difference. See if I can get a little more light over here for you guys. So your bezels over here are much thinner. It is a big difference. The other thing is how thick the laptop is. I don't know if I can get it to really show, but the Max 17 folded is actually smaller than the base pad of the Sager. It's a big difference. It's got the standard North Face backpack right here. It's nothing special. It's a regular laptop, slot in it. I can fit the Max 17 in that slot. The Sager does not fit in that slot. You can't do it. So that's a big win for the Max. It's really portable. Get this back up. Now, the downside, what really matters, is performance. The Max 17, with the 2070 Super, I bet you it'd be nice. It'd probably be very comparable. Just doing the Intel XTU benchmark, the Sager finished 2 points ahead, 2990 versus 2988. That's not a meaningful difference. But if we go over here to Firestrike, this was the highest score I've gotten out of the 2070 is 18,624. And then 19,421 out of the 2070 Super and Sager. So you're talking 2095, 2905, and 21760 versus 22,861 and 21,754. So you get a big difference with the 2070 Super, whereas the CPU in these are identical, and the scoring reflects that. Now, the Max 17 has Electro Boost, so the 2070 in this is rated at 115 watts, but it actually pulls 135 watts, whereas the Sager, again, it's a higher tier GPU, but it's still got 115 watts to work with. Those extra cores on the GPU are seemingly making up a huge difference versus the power. Now, one thing to really look at here is our core clocks. So the clock frequency on this is 1950, which I has no problem maintaining with the Electro Boost, versus 2100. Temperature on this was 66 with the Super, 64 on the regular 2070. Unfortunately, that extra power wattage just wasn't enough to overcome the extra cores on the 2070. I'd say the Max's cooling is more impressive, but it doesn't do enough to give you any tangible gains. Whereas this one, I mean, the cooling's adequate. It's a bigger chassis, and the Max 17 cools just as well as the Sager. Actually, cools a little better. On our processor frequency, I believe we were literally within 1 point, or 1 megahertz rather. So we're talking 4889 on the Max versus 4888. So yeah, it's literally 1 megahertz faster. These things perform very similarly, but the Max does it in a much thinner chassis, which it is impressive. But you're giving up a pretty big amount of power on the GPU end at the same price point. You get the same amount of RAM. These are very similar configurations. It's 1 terabyte and 32 gigs of RAM on both of them, 10875, and the only real difference is the GPU. You step 1 tier down to a 2070 on the Max 17. Which again, similar performing on the CPU. Both perform excellent on the CPU. The GPU on both of them performed excellent for what they are, but like I said, that extra wattage just can't make up for the higher tier GPU. Now the downside is, if you want that same 2070 Super and a Max 17, you're talking an extra $300, and I think the price has actually gone down. When I was looking, it was $2,400 if I remember right. So they might have done a small price cut or whatever. And originally, if you ordered on Amazon, Eluktronics charged more than what you could order from their own site for. So they might have just adjusted that to reflect that. And at that point, $300, you also get a 240 hertz screen. But personally, I don't care about a 240 hertz screen. 144 is more than enough. When it comes to something like Call of Duty Modern Warfare or Battlefield, it's pretty hard to get 144 hertz anyways. There are 144 frames, which is what, you'd saturate the screen. So the 240 hertz screen on this, I really wish they would just get rid of it. Or, make it optional. But right now, if you get a 2070 Super, it forces you into the 240 hertz screen. And it really kills the value proposition of the Max 17. Now, the feeling on this, they both get really warm on the keyboard and the touchpad areas. I think the Sager does a little better in that regard, but it's not, neither one of them are bad. The Max 17, I definitely noticed it's worse. The screen, I don't have a way to actually calculate the brightness. I'd say the Max 17 is a little brighter, but I thought the animations in games that I was playing looked a little better on the Sager. So again, neither one of them's bad at all. They're both good screens, not an issue there. The color on both seems good. I do think the color on the Max 17 is a little better. The weight, it's absolutely no comparison, just like the thickness of the laptop. Like I said, the base pad of the Sager is literally thicker than the folded Max 17. So, really what it comes down to is, how portable do you want your laptop? Because if portability is what you're going for and you're willing to sacrifice some performance, it is a significant amount of performance in gaming. Day-to-day use, so that portability, if you really do carry your laptop around and all you have is exactly $2,000 to spend, you know, maybe the Max is worth it to you. Personally, I don't carry my laptop around me very often, which means I will be sending the Max 17 back and holding on to the Sager. Another thing, I don't think it actually matters, because I think 10th gen Intel only goes up to 2933 on the RAM, but for the same price, you're getting 2933 on the Max and 3200 megahertz RAM on the Sager, which again, on paper, is a feature, but I don't think that it actually matters. Again, we're talking per key RGB on the Sager, which is nice. So you can do all sorts of cool effects here. So, you know, that's a snake effect, which, again, it looks cool. It doesn't really do anything for you, but it's nice to have. But one thing that I do really like about this is if you wanted to do emulation for like a PlayStation, I can make that one orange, and then I can make this one green. I got colors mixed up, but the point being, if I wanted to emulate like a PlayStation controller or whatever, just for whatever reason, it's a great option to have, and since it's per key, you can do it. On the Max, it's 4 colors. Again, it's a nice feature. I think the feeling of the keyboard itself is better, and that's something that I'm happy with. The downside, and I'll see if I can get it, but you can kind of see the actual diodes on this. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on video. But yeah, the speakers on both of them are good. I'd say the Sager wins. But again, you're talking about a thicker laptop, so they have more space to work with, so that should be expected. It's not really a knock against the Max. So yeah, that's pretty much the two laptops. You get more performance for the dollar with the Sager, hands down. But you give up the thin and light portability. I can't find a better deal than the Sager, to be honest. When you get to this level, the Sager is just a really good value. The Max, like I said, it's a nice laptop. I'm not a fan of the keyboard at all. And you might be able to get more with overclocking out of the 2070, but I use the audio OC function in MSI Afterburner because Eluktronics doesn't include one in their control center. And my score on Firestrike actually went down by about 600 points, so not a good result. I wasn't really expecting that. It seems like maybe somebody who's a little more experienced with that might be able to do more than I am. But, you know, I think, honestly, the 2070 might be as good as it's going to get from the factory. Which, I mean, for the end user is great. But for the sake of this comparison, it's not so great. One thing I thought was interesting, they use the exact same power supplies. They're both 230 watt Chicani power supplies. And, you know, I've had 3 laptops now that use that power supply. One of them was absolutely awful. These two both seem great in terms of how cool they stay under load. I literally thought my couch was going to light on fire with the first one I had. I ended up returning the laptop because I was like, this can't be normal. Coincidentally, that was a Sager, but again, it's a Chicani power supply, so I think the power supply was defective, not the laptop. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it, and if you're looking in, you know, an absolute strict $2,000 budget for a laptop, these are the two I would be looking at. And if you can live with the compromises on the Max 17, you do get a thin and light. But they are compromises, in my opinion. Personally, I think the Sager build quality is actually feels beefier, it's sturdier. One thing you can see, though, is kind of fingerprints. There are none whatsoever. I can't get my fingerprints to stick on that. Oh, and another thing, I really don't like the single piece. It's very hard to tell when you're making a left click and a right click on this. It doesn't do it. Whereas this, it's two pieces, which I like better. Also, super glossy. Still glossy feeling, just not as good. Anyways, Max 17 versus the Sager NP8378F2. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any more questions about performance or features or just what living like with either of these laptops are, just ask in the comments. I'll be happy to answer.